Wow. Welcome, Deploy24. Yeah. All right. So as is usually my practice, I'll go off script. Look, I think that we're selling a lot of electric cars, probably 5x the levels of 2020, and things continue to grow. As part of that, we're building 400 gigawatt hours of new battery manufacturing capacity here in the United States. Some scrap, of course, but also just a lot of supply chain to build up, right? With the way the tax credits are structured, we want domestic content, and so one of the things I'm curious about is it does feel like we don't actually have a lithium shortage, right? In the sense that we have plenty of lithium in the world, we just need to bring it to market. Right, and but we have this global dynamic, right, with China and with global market prices, et cetera. The thing that the United States does well is figure out how to differentiate itself using technology, right? And so I want to start with you, Ajay, around your origin story, because you really are a technology story. I mean, that's why you have Ally in the name of your company. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm actually a chemical engineer. Started.
I'm a mechanical engineer, so we're the lower class.
No. But anyway, started in the lithium industry. So we're actually comparing notes, James and I backstage. A lot of overlaps, small industry. But yeah, we were building, in short, we were building refineries for lithium. Now to go on the technology point, we've been through a lot of generations of technology of making lithium in battery grade. I mean, if I think back, I was at Hatch, an engineering firm, 2009-10. We built the Galaxy lithium carbonate plant. It was actually in China. And originally, those facilities were batch processing. There was a facility across the river. It had 500 people in it. It wasn't a continuous process. We built that facility. It was a continuous process with about 150 people, I think. First of its kind. That was a 20,000-ton-a-year lithium carbonate plant. So that technology piece has been a continual element. I think what's been different is, if I reflect, and I started Life Cycle 2016, it's been 8 years, we recycle lithium-ion batteries to make lithium, nickel, cobalt from an urban mining source, not a traditional mining source. But if I reflect on it, I think we have an immense opportunity to keep that going, both on the secondary side, the primary side. James will touch on what they're doing. But we have a total lack, to be blunt, of this processing capacity here domestically. We have to build it. And to riff a bit off your comments, Jigar, I'm sure it's been talked about today, just yesterday we saw the export ban of germanium and other materials talk about graphite from China. That is highly disruptive. I mean, today, 70 to 90% of the refining of all those materials is in China. So bluntly put, we have no choice for the purposes of energy independence to build here. The question is, how can we do it in a differentiated way? And that comes to the technology, the flow sheets, the environmental controls, wastewater and the like, so we can talk more about that, but that's an opening perspective.
Well, and to follow up on your comment, why the United States?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can just tell you, I was actually last week, I was we have these facilities that shred batteries, we call them spokes, it's like a spoke and hub model. And I did the math, we today have 3 gigawatt hours of batteries for recycling in our warehouses. We are inundated with batteries. I think most folks you would ask about recycling, they'd say, oh yeah, it's 10, 15 years away, the EV is gonna last a long time. Well, the reality is making EVs and making battery packs and cells isn't perfect. It's actually pretty hard. And despite whatever low mythical scrap rates that people talk about, I haven't seen them. And so why the US? Well, we're making cars here, we're making EVs here, we have OEMs that are assembling packs here. That also generates waste. And another element to this, which is part of the community piece and the technology piece, lithium batteries go boom sometimes, as we know. And that's a little scary, right? So you can't just put them into traditional scrap supply chains, you have to use technology. So as an example, in our spokes, we shred under an immersion to basically prevent fire. And we've seen some recent examples of when you don't treat lithium batteries well, what happens. So how can we differentiate around technology, safety, environmental controls, and then treating these issues domestically so you don't have a global passport for batteries.
James, you've been doing this, for some time, and you also have a technology story in the way in which you decided to pursue your efforts. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think that the best broad answer to your question is, I think that anybody that wants to be in the primary lithium chemicals production business, and I emphasize chemicals business, not just precursor materials, has to have a real commitment to technology and to a detailed business. I tell people all the time, lithium's kind of a complicated little creature, and it messes with you. I remember back my first project, I was a chairman of Orocobre in the dark ages of the early days of the early ages. And everybody said, well, we don't need a pilot plant. We can run all these calculations and know that the flow sheet's going to work. Well, that was a big idea that was wrong, and it cost us a lot by not doing thorough pilot planting. And I swore I'd never build another one. I'm doing my second right now, and it's another 8 years. But I assure you that we spent an incredible amount of time in technical detail, to understand our flow sheets, because it's not a priori very well. Chemical engineers get it wrong. So test data is very important, and so we've done that. I think the other thing is that to be in America, we can't do it the same way as the Chinese. We have to find economies. We're at a terrible competitive disadvantage as it relates to the cost of CapEx, the amount of CapEx that's out there. So we can't tolerate to have an inefficient operation, because then we have an OpEx disadvantage, and those combinations are not good for ROI and investment. So in our case, we've really worked hard to bring in the appropriate technologies to automate our systems, to have very sophisticated ways of measuring what's going on in our plants. And another fun thing is just, we've teamed up with Caterpillar, and we're putting in all of our mine fleet is completely automated. So when we come up, we'll have, it's like an airport with all these big old giant trucks moving around without anybody in them. Well, that saves money, and it also, by the way, is safer.
Yeah.
So technology plays an important role, but it can't be I think you have to watch out with technology, because you don't want it at the bleeding edge of technology, because then you have risk of it not working. And so one of the things that we've done with our technical approach is very detailed work, but it turned out we were able to work through our flow sheets for these unconventional resources in a way, Jigar, that didn't use any single unit of operation that was, some new technology. And I think that's a differentiation between like our work, maybe Thacker Pass, and DLE, where you start drifting into the more technical, challenging issues, and we need it, but it's harder. And what we're doing really just use standard unit of operations, but done very well.
And then you really raised a lot of your early funding from Australia, from your facility. Would love to hear about why, and now that you've gotten a conditional commitment from the Loan Programs Office, you're raising money here in the U.S. and just wanted to compare and contrast some of that.
Well, it's turned out both the companies that I've helped build is a great team. I don't want to take too much credit, but I've been the chairman, executive chairman, for 17 years in the lithium business. And the first one, the company that had this idea and drilled 2 slim holes into Alaraz, the great Alaraz salt flat at 14,000 feet in the middle of nowhere in the Andes of Argentina. The company was worth $27 million the day before they announced the results of those holes, and $27 million the day after. And my team happened to understand it was one of the greatest lithium chemicals they'd ever seen, and we were able to buy a big chunk of it. But it happened to start in Australia, the company. So that's the origin. And there's a lot of, Australia is a great place to raise early capital, because they're used to sort of venture capital through the public markets, where it's much more difficult here. Yeah. Then it turned out that the second one was sort of the same way. It was a small, little, tiny company came to me and said, look, we'd like you to be our chairman and put up some money like you did at Orocobre because we had that success. And that led to another 8 years of my life. My wife's a little irritated by all this, by the way, I just want you to know. And so we started raising money there. But by the way, interestingly, not just since the Loan Program Office, which is enormously important to us, of course, but our shareholders have drifted to America for a while. We're now at ADR on the NASDAQ, and we end up, our shareholders are amazingly number of them where I live in Houston. I mean, it's weird how the very most powerful people of Houston have become huge shareholders of our company. So I guess the oil patch is drifting over to the lithium patch. I don't know.
Well, there's definitely a lot of interest in lithium from the oil majors and others, and so it is a topic of conversation there.
Yes, it is.
Ajay, you are building big things here in the United States, and just wanted to maybe have you go through your experience around EPC contractors and all those things, because one of the things I would say that people complain about, and I think James alluded to, was that the U.S. isn't as sort of plug and play at doing these big things. Wanted to maybe hear your experience there.
Sure. I mean, let's start at first principles. I mean, I think a lot of these flow sheets, and I agree with what James said around technology, you got to be careful, right? You're innovating around flow sheets, but if you start introducing too many degrees of freedom, classic thing I was first taught is then things are going to go wrong because you're basically introducing too many things. So as it is, building these plants is hard. So you want to try and control that, but still be innovative. So that's number one. Number two, because a lot of these things are new, right? I mean, in the West, we don't have a single of scale, not in the US yet, built and operating. Hydromet, wet chemistry processing for black mass doesn't exist. So when you go to actually do these things on EPC or EPCM, it's a pretty simple thing, right? Who knows the most about it? Well, the company does. So who bears the risk? It's a classic thing in mining, right? Who bears the risk? Well, probably more the company than the EPC. And if you want the EPC to bear it, they're going to mark it up to some point where it becomes uneconomic. So that's a classic challenge. It's always a challenge when we were at Hatch with any project, because mineralogy is all different per project. It's not all the same, right?
That's right.
So that's an inherent challenge that a lot of these technologies face off the bat. So, okay, how do you navigate? Well, you're also balancing that while trying to hit speed. And we ran into a speed bump, I think people may know. That was last October. This has taken a lot of perseverance, and I thank the LPO for working through that with us. We're building back better. We've been executing the plan. And we basically had a CapEx overrun due to the contracting structure, really, of the project. We were trying to fix it on the go, and the speed you're moving at, the spend, the pace, didn't go well. So we had to take a tough decision to pause. We've done a big assessment. We're going to build things a little bit differently. And then on the contracting, lastly, and then just the broader point of, can it be competitive? Look, I mean, I think across the U.S. you're looking at some variability, but it's broadly in the same zip code. We're not talking about a multiple of CapEx difference versus other regions.
Right.
So that's your competitive set, number one. And number two, when it comes to actually contracting, devil's in the detail. I mean, investors want, right, like fixed price. Hey, can you get this thing fixed price? Just wrap the whole thing? No.
No way.
You can't. You usually can't. But what can you do? Well, you can maybe portion off parts of the plant and say, well, this part is fixed price. So you really try to take a big thing, put it in bite-sized chunks, reduce the risk bit by bit, and that's the way to tackle it. So that's what we're going to do. And obviously did a lot of work with the DOE to get comfortable with that. But yeah, it's not easy. And you got to build things.
Go ahead, James.
There's all kinds of challenges working in the United States, and I think it's worth it, and I think this is the place you want to do it, but it's got all kind of complications. One is everything's so expensive. I mean, if you're building under a loan program office loan, you have an additional obligation to stay with basic Davis-Bacon wage rates.
Yep.
And we're sitting there, I mean, I almost fell out of my chair. I realized that Davis-Bacon wage rates are $85 wrapped for somebody that's painting pipes. You go to China and the people that are doing the same work, and I'm not suggesting we should do what they do, but still they're getting paid $4 or $5 an hour, and you start realizing how big the differentiation. I think it's about 67, 68% more expensive here than it is to build the same thing in China. So, the dilemma that we face is we have this cost disadvantage, and it goes into OpEx too, transport and all kinds of things. But we have not yet figured out how to have a differentiated price. We're still getting, the price is being set by the China price.
Yeah.
And we don't have an American lithium carbonate price. Of course, we don't have much lithium carbonate production here. We only have 5,000 tons at best right now.
And do you think the policy that we put in place around 30D would, lead to a America lithium price?
I don't know. I'm waiting to hear about it because all I get is, I have to meet these very difficult, pricing scenarios that are all coming out of, analysts coming basically out of Asia, and so far we don't see it. But I think that, a structural challenge is we have a higher cost structure. You cannot be as economic as the Chinese right now, and you're lying to yourself if you think you can. You can't.
Well, but I think Ajay suggested that there is a national security component to this, right? I mean, that you can't build an entire industry based on a supply chain with that level of concentration. We would never accept one country providing 70 to 90% of all the oil to the marketplace.
Well, I'm 100% with you, and I don't think we should accept it. Okay, I think that's absolutely right. Don't suggest that, by the way.
No, I know that. I guess what I'm trying to figure out, though, is part of the reason this conference matters so much and what you guys are doing matters so much is that we're trying to figure this out together.
I agree.
Right? And I'm curious, whose job is it to figure this out, right? Because, the government has all sorts of smart people that, whatever, think about national security and that kind of stuff, but they don't have the same experience base that you have around how the policies get implemented into your business. And so we have, deploy dialogues here at the conference, and we're trying to I think there's a lithium conversation that folks were a part of. And so I think that's great, but I'm just curious, at some point, whose job is it to be able to have this conversation intelligently? Is it a trade association? Is it the National Mining Association? Is it, securing America's future energy, right? Safe, or what do you think?
Industry groups and policy. It's all three. It has to be a full team effort. I was even having a conversation before this. It's public. There's recent talk about copper scrap being restricted to China, and that manipulates markets.
Yeah.
So what's a private company to do about that? Right? You can do some things maybe, but that's the point. It's both policy and when there are perhaps, I'm not going to wade into the whole geopolitics, but perhaps unfair or undue influence due to policy on one side, well, we can't do anything. There has to be some sort of action, right, on the other side. And then our job is to make money, right?
Yeah.
We got to build these things, make money, be economic, do as best we can.
Pay back my loan?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
really important.
Absolutely. Wouldn't take it on if we couldn't, yeah.
By the way, let me just say this, that the work of the Loan Program Office, okay, Jigar, has made an enormous contribution to a bridge to this wherever we're going, okay?
Yeah.
Because if we were all having to pay the, commercial rate out there for the loans that are associated with these good projects, we would be much further away from where we need to be. And I think with the good work that our team has done at Ioneer and our project, it's such an exceptionally good project that with your assistance, we actually can pin out a decent return on our investment, good enough to go forward and spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. But it's not so easy, and I think that we need to have a continuing dialogue between the government and industry about, okay, you want us to do this for the America, we want to do it for America. We do have these cost problems, okay, and I think that it's going to make it harder for even secondary projects, because the best projects are getting done first.
Yeah, of course.
So.
Well, just with the time we have left, there's obviously an incoming administration coming in.
Yeah.
And, part of what I'm concerned about is, I think part of what you're saying is this is a very tough conversation, right? It's not really easy to say, here are the 12 regulations that I would make less stringent, and that'll cut the differential with China in half. Some of this is know-how, right? Some of this is experience and expertise, because we haven't really done these kinds of big things in this country for 40 years.
Right.
And some of it is probably some of these things that are, red tape in nature. I'm just, there's obviously been a lot of rhetoric around how all that stuff's going to get cut and it's going to be easier to do business in the country. And, I guess I'm just trying to understand what is the forum that you guys expect to invest into to be able to, have a productive conversation here?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer.
Well, I only ask you tough ones.
I don't know. I think that, I wish I could tell you that I had the answer to your question. I mean, we're going to wade into it. I mean, we really don't have clarity right now. It's very difficult to ponder as to what's coming. We know that we're facing a significant shift in policy, a significant difference in view about the urgency of climate change, which, by the way, is very important because we tend to forget about that. But what drives my work at this point, I don't need to do this anymore to pay my bills. I'm here because I want to save the planet for my children and my grandchildren, so it's very, very difficult, It's very, very difficult to confront good people that seem to somehow come to a conclusion about the danger that we face on this planet is so antithetical to my understanding that I find myself just dazed by it. I can't believe that we're even having this kind of conversation anymore, and we're getting ready to face a policy shift on this. Now, I don't know. What the hell is Elon Musk doing? I just have no idea. I'm not as smart as...
People ask themselves that every day.
I have no idea what the hell he's doing. He's destroying his position with progressives. I don't understand it. But my personal view is we, as a nation, have to make these investments. If we fail and we even have any kind of significant slowdown in where we're going over the next 4 years, China is going to have our lunch. I mean, I have business in...
And dinner.
And dinner and breakfast. I mean, I was just in Chile. I have businesses in Chile where I build solar farms and trying to build a big hydrogen facility down there in the Atacama. And, it's unbelievable. I mean, every other car is a BYD car down there. Every electric bus is a BYD electric bus. The solar panels are all there. The storage that's coming in is all there. So, and they're surrounded. Basically, if I was Xi, I would be sort of laughing and thinking to myself, my God, I got them. They're going to go off here and they're going to do drill, baby, drill, and they're not going to focus. And by the way, I'm from the oil business. By the way, my middle name is Derrick. I was named after a frickin' oil derrick. I'm from Houston. All right.
Well, look, unfortunately we're out of time, but as I'll leave it there. But I will say that I'd never bet against you guys.
Well, thank you, and we thank you, Jigar. Really, seriously, what you all have done has been so enabling to people like us. I know I'm speaking for both of us.
Absolutely.
Without you guys, we would have a different conversation. So, thank you very much to the Loan Program Office and to the DOE. You've really been instrumental.
Thank you.